So, global events are available on the PTS. They have been for a while now actually, and I'm a little bit late to the party with this video. I of course understand that giving feedback as fast as possible is very important to the developers, but this has also been a difficult topic for me to dive into because while I like the idea of global events and I do actually enjoy playing with the given modifiers, I feel that the reward system leaves a lot to be desired with the RNG that you get with the global event caches and the ways to farm them. And I would say that this has been a topic of discussion with almost every update that the Division has had in the past. We've always had sort of a fight between two parts of the community when it comes down to the rewards. The more casual audience always brings up the fact that they do not have the time or the coordinated squads to grind as much as it would require to obtain a new gear, while the hardcore audience always brings up the fact that they want to be rewarded for their invested time with superior and more min-maxed gear over the other players. Massive of course finds themselves in the middle and has to make decisions based on what they think is best. In 1.1 to 1.3 you could say that they catered more towards the hardcore players, where the best loot was locked behind the most difficult content, the heroic incursions and that kind of stuff. But then patch 1.4 and 1.5 for the most part leaned more towards the casual audience, handing out gear set drops as if it's nothing. I would say that both systems have their pros and their cons. Locking gear behind the most difficult content gives motivation for the hardcore players to get better gear and grind more, but it also creates a very unbalanced environment for PvP, as it cuts out a big part of the player base from the new gear and it widens the gap between strengths of different players. Not to mention that it also cuts players out from that new content in the first place, because if they can't get a good group to play the content, then it's almost as if there is no content. On the other hand though, handing out loot like candy may please everybody for a few weeks, but then it also has the chance to backfire as everybody finds themselves bored with nothing left to do after they've completed all the builds that they wanted to complete. I believe that with global events, Massive is trying to please both. They want to make the content easier to do through the modifiers that the global event provides so that everybody can farm at relative ease, and then they're also giving a higher than normal drop rate on the new items when they're first introduced, but then after the global event ends, their plan is to cut back on the drop rate to prevent players from being min-maxed too fast and try to keep them busy until the next global event hits 1 month later. On paper, it sounds pretty good, but I think that with the current execution, the current way that they're doing things, trying to please both sides, it's actually creating a suboptimal experience for everybody. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to see if we can improve on the experience that global events offer for both the casual audience and the hardcore audience, so that everybody sort of gets what they want. Now, the way that this currently works is that by completing missions or incursions during a global event, players will be granted with a certain amount of global event tokens, which can then be spent on caches that have a certain percent chance to give the player a classified gear set item. I believe that the numbers on the PTS that we currently have are a 5% chance for the support cache and then a 25% chance for the outbreak cache. So over time, every 1 out of 4 outbreak caches should reward the player with a classified gear item. Now, I don't really think that this system is ideal. I don't think it works for the casual players because they can spend a few hours of their day grinding out those global event tokens only to get nothing from the caches that they just bought, and thus they can have the feeling of wasting their valuable time. And I also think that it doesn't work for the hardcore players, as the RNG on these caches is so high with all the different sets that could drop from it and the amount of stuff that you actually need to get a decent 6-piece going, that it just ends up in frustrating dice rolls over and over and over again. And keep in mind that of course everybody, both the casual and the hardcore audience, has the feeling that they're playing against a clock during these global events, because once the global events are over, the classified gear is going to be added to the rare loot pool, to the exotic loot pool, you know, the same way that we get exotics right now, and it's going to be a 10-fold harder to come by because we can't buy those caches anymore. So every time that you buy a cache and you don't get an item, it's going to feel that much more punishing. Now, would increasing the drop chance or lowering the cost on these caches solve this issue? Perhaps. It might help a bit. You know, players might be able to get their hands on a little bit more items during the global event itself, but I think it still doesn't really solve the issue at its core. Massive has stated that these low drop chances on the classified gear is something that they want. They want people to really work for their gear and want these items to be very hard to come by. And as much as I understand why they would want to go that route, I believe that doing that is a very big mistake. I strongly believe that Massive needs to be rather generous with these classified gear items both during the global event but also afterwards in the 3 weeks of downtime. In my eyes, this gear is almost going to be the lifeblood of this game now. Every month we're going to have a new global event, 1 week of some cool new modifiers, and with that event we have 3 new gear sets with 6 pieces that everybody wants to try out. It's like a new hero or a new champion for your favorite MOBA game gets released every month. True, we're not getting a new map, a map expansion or new game modes, but these classified gear items, they add a little something to the game to spice it up a bit. The thing is, if most players are not able to even have a chance to play with these new classified gear sets, then they're gonna miss out on that new content. I'm not sure if everybody is going to agree with me on this. In fact, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to actively disagree with me on this. But I really don't like the way that they introduced exotic gear items into the game either. You know, where players had to farm the same mission over and over and over again in the hope that they would get the item that they were looking for, and in the hope that it also had some good rolls. Of course, the RNG on the classified gear itself is going to be mitigated a bit by the fact that classified gear allows you to reroll 2 stats. But things such as armor or items such as the knee pads or the gloves with a lot of important stats on them, it will still be very much a hit or a miss. And of course you could say that there is the alternative to get exotics in the game right now, because that would be to grind out a lot of the exotic caches from the legendary missions and the heroic incursions. But of course, you have to remember that the legendary missions and the heroic incursions, that's content that is maybe too difficult to complete for a lot of people in the game. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. Of course, it's easy for me. I have a group. I know how this game works inside out. As we speak, I've already got over 100 exotic caches in preparation for 1.7. You know, I really want to get that ninja bike. But a lot of people would have a really, really good day if they would be able to complete Clear Sky using matchmaking just once. And I can tell you right now, if the classified gear is going to be anything like the exotic drop rate after the global event is ended, then I really can't see a lot of people realistically completing their 6-piece builds in between global events. Not for the casual players and probably also not for a lot of the hardcore players. And that would be a huge loss for the game as a whole. Again, if most players have not had the chance to even try out a 6-piece of themselves by the time that the second global event drops, then I think we're going to have a problem, because that means that most players aren't going to be able to enjoy the best thing that this patch brings: new, powerful builds. And after all, if you really feel like that being more generous and giving out these classified gear sets more easily is a bad thing to the game, if you really feel like that people are getting gear far too quickly, then if you really want to, you can always drop another gear score increase when patch 1.8 drops, where maybe we add a world tier 6 where all the gear that drops is classified gear and where exotic gear drops at a much higher rate to kind of reset the playing field and have people going hard at the game again for another few weeks. But honestly, that's a worry for later. Right now we have global events dropping every month with new gear dropping every month, and that's opportunity for players to come back and check out the game every single month. But if they do so, they have to be able to get that new gear at a somewhat decent rate. So right now, I think our only focus needs to be generosity and allowing players to use the new content that you're giving them. And with that taken in mind, I want to talk about the global events in itself, maybe look at what the hardcore players want out of this, and maybe look at what the casual players want out of this, and then try to combine both to make it a better experience overall. To start off with the casual audience, I believe the big thing that they want, the big thing that they're looking for with these global events, is that they want to be rewarded for logging in and participating when these events are live. The last thing that they want to see is spending their hard-earned global event tokens on these caches only to get nothing. They also do not want the vast majority of the rewards being locked behind the content that they cannot complete, as this will make them feel that the hardcore players get an even bigger advantage over them and that they will never be able to overcome that again. It feels like if they're not throwing their life at this game, then they might as well not play it. On the flip side, I believe that most hardcore players, they want to be rewarded for their skill or the time they put into this game. Not only during the global event, but also afterwards. They do not want boundaries or a limited amount of items that you can farm during the global event. In their eyes, more time investment must mean more loot and, more importantly, also better loot. They do not want everything to be decided purely by RNG. If they complete difficult content over and over and over again, or complete the content faster than most others would, they want that to be acknowledged. They want to feel rewarded for actually grinding out the content in the game. Now, I'm sure there are some other demands that a lot of players might have, or a lot of expectations that a lot of players might have out of these global events. But I think that if we're talking about rewards, then this fills the bigger picture. And as you can see as well, the current cash system doesn't really fall in line with either of those wishes. It, for instance, doesn't guarantee rewards to the player, and the rewards that you get are also 100% RNG. It isn't all bad because, it does allow players to farm these caches without a limit, and most content isn't as difficult because of the global event modifiers. You're able to two-shot any boss, but that of course stops the moment that the global event ends. So the way I see it, there's still some work to be done besides just being a bit more generous. To start off with, I'd like to add guaranteed rewards for the more casual audience and a way to farm more targeted loot for the hardcore audience. Both of these things might be very easy to implement. For example, the guaranteed rewards, they could come in the form of daily missions that you can complete during the global event. Maybe even add in a special weekly mission as well. When players complete these, it will guarantee them a classified gear cache with at least one guaranteed classified gear item. Of course, these daily missions shouldn't be longer than maybe 45 minutes or an hour worth of time, so that the casual player at least gets some form of a reward when he logs in daily during the global events. Surely he will not end up with 7, 8 or 9 god rolled classified items at the end of the week, nor is the probability of him getting a full 6-piece build very high. But this would at least be something to be added as a baseline, something that everybody can earn even if you don't have that much time to play. Then, for the hardcore players to target classified gear more easily, I would also like there to be caches for purchase that are more expensive, but maybe, for example, could only drop one gear set. Again, depending on the drop rates, it doesn't have to give me a 100% chance to actually get a classified version of that set. But I would like there to be some sort of Deadeye cache that, if I open it, will always give me Deadeye, either classified or not. That way, if for the global event I want to farm Deadeye, I can just buy Deadeye. That's just an example though. Just another idea that I had as well is to add maybe a double drop rate weekend, similar to double XP weekends, where in the weekends in the week between global events, the global event modifiers return as an optional thing to enable with specific missions, where then maybe the drop rate for classified gear sets would be increased by a lot, so that everybody who couldn't grind during the actual global event has a chance to catch back up during these weekends. And this way, you're also doing something more with the cool modifiers that you created for PvE. In my opinion, it's a bit of a shame to create all these things only for them to be never used again after that 1 week. But that's just something that I thought of. It's not something that I've really spent a lot of time thinking about yet. Anyway, I think that pretty much sums it up. I hope you can see as to why this was a little bit of a difficult topic for me to cover. It was a challenge, so really, I hope I got my point across properly. Nevertheless, though, I would appreciate some other point of views here. I know that some people are going to disagree with me. Some people really like the exotic gear farm. That's possible. If so, you can speak up. Doesn't have to be in the comment section here. You can always reach me on Twitter as well. But with that being said, I will see you guys later. Or, like they say, in the Netherlands, zie je later.